inspired by what rebels do. I got attracted to that topic when I was thinking about so many situations where we start out to change things. It can be something in our team, something in our unit, something in the organization, or it can be for personal reasons, something that we want to change in our families or in our private life, our habits, for example. We start out with big ambitions, right? We have these huge goals for changing things. But then when we look at reality, what actually happened, in hindsight, we see so often that there was only a teeny tiny thing that we actually accomplished. And this is, of course, a big problem, and it got me intrigued in my work. And I was thinking, okay, how can we find maybe inspiration from somewhere else and from somebody else who is already good at bringing change into the world? Let me just give me, please, a quick show of hands. Who of you is trying to bring in change and progress from the outside into an organization? Who's doing that? Okay, roughly half of the audience, great. And who is already in an organization, try to, in small ways or bigger ways, to change how work and business is done within the organization? So working from the inside. Okay, I think it's split half and half. Great, thank you very much. Yeah, and we already saw that from time to time. It's really difficult to be this kind of a rebel. So I just another few here. Who of you is struggling with bringing change to an organization? Who's having experience with that? Yes. Okay. Good. So why is change so damn hard? That is a question. Because if we look at it from a certain perspective, it shouldn't be that hard. We have organizations who are desperately wanting to change. You can read it in every issue of the Harvard Business Review, for example. You can have conversations with C-level or other managers, and they will all tell you, we need to change quickly in the right direction and in a controlled way, maybe. And that is the tricky part. And then we are there, either as employees, as colleagues, or from the outside world, and we want to help them to change, right? We are willing, we have good intentions. But then the results often is that change is not happening. And I got intrigued by this dilemma. Why is that the case, right? Why is it so damn hard to do that? And I was looking around for inspiration to get from aspiring change to actually making change happen. How can we get better at doing that? And there are some suspects when I looked around. For example, we have activists. We have people who want to change something really, really desperately, and they go to the streets, they bring it to the street, and they gather and create a movement out of that. And we have, of course, the politicians who should have our best in their mind, so the elected representations or representatives of us as citizens. And then we have the more darker side to it. We have the lobbyists who have the ears of some of the politicians, at least. And of course, we have people bringing change on an individual level, coaches who help people to grow. And then we have these kinds of people, the rebels. And I got really intrigued of rebels when I started studying them. I realized what is so interesting about it is that they, of course, rebels want to change things, and they want to change it in a big way. So large-scale change, mostly societal change. Okay, of course, it's not only about a team and organization. It's way bigger, their ambitions, and they use quite unorthodox methods to achieve that. Every rebel has his own way or her own way, but it's rather unorthodox what they do. And what's also interesting is that the type of change they're pushing for not always is leading to good things. So there is also kind of a flaw flawed nature to what rebels do. It can go in a very good direction. It can also go in a bad direction. I think it's always good to have that in mind, that we can. It's very easy to take the wrong the wrong side of the street. So what I want to do is to bring this idea of rebels a little bit closer to you and see how they can help us to make change happen. And of course, when we talk about rebels here, that can be inspiring for us, it's about the good rebels. So the benevolent rebel who really wants, she sees a situation and realizes we can do better. We need to do something about it. Right? This is unbearable. This is intolerable. We need to change. Okay, here are some rebels. It's just a selection of the ones I studied, and they come from all walks of life, from all areas. They are reaching from religion, business, politics, music, so artists, of course. They all are rebels in a way. And some of them you might instantly recognize. Some of them might be not so familiar to you. Yeah, I want to share some insights about them. What I did to make it a little bit easier to grasp, I created a very simple framework for looking at the inspiration that they bring to us. And let me guide you very quickly through that, and then we go into practical stuff. Okay, so at the center of this kind of change is the rebel herself. So, and this is a circle because when she is involved in bringing change into the world, she also changes, right? It's not only change that we bring to the world, but also we as a person, we also change. And we'll look at that a little bit closer later because I think it's very, very crucial to understand it. Then we have the next circle. This is about the coalition. No rebel can achieve something meaningful on her own. It always needs allies to get something done, something that is really meaningful. And that is not only true in society, but also in business and in other contexts. And then we have the outer circle, of course. This is about the system itself. So is it a team? Is it the unit? Is it the organization? Is it part of our society that we want to change? And we always have to have these three levels or three dimensions in our mind when we think about our change. Okay, and then I came up with 6 aspects, 6 ways on how to bring change inspired by rebels. And I want to share, out of the 6, I want to show and share 4 of them due to the time that we have today. So let's jump into the first one, and I think that's a very good way to start with Mahatma Gandhi. And he helps us to see what is really there, the first aspect of it. And just to remind you, everybody knows him, of course, but to remind you about some specifics, when Mahatma Gandhi was in the first, when he already had some experience with practicing his non-violent way of disobedience in South Africa, after he has finished his work in South Africa, he decided to go back to India, to his home country. And what he did, together with his wife, he decided to take a train across India. And he deliberately used a 3rd-class train to do that. And we can imagine what that means, right? In 1915, when he's doing that, we have unbearable heat during the day, freezing cold at night, no windows, no closed environment, no heating, of course. And he was, afterwards he was saying that this was a situation where he really realized how miserable his fellow citizens in India really are. That was kind of one of the tipping points that he had. And what he did, I think, is he immersed himself into the situation of the people. And that is something we often do not do as change agents. We are not really in the field. We are not really connected to what is happening there. Okay. Now, a much more mundane example from my own experience. It's just a small business example. I was several years ago, I was tasked with bringing an innovation initiative into a company. So this company was desperately looking for change. They knew we need to be more customer-centric, we need to be more agile, we need to be more innovative in general. Yeah, the usual thing, you know that, right? And they all wanted that. I had the honor to lead the initiative, to build a team around people that were already in the company, hiring new people, bringing them in, and lead this innovation initiative within the company. And I thought, oh wow, this is a great opportunity. And I also thought, oh, I'm really well prepared. Me and myself and the team, we have very good intentions. We have good people. I've read a lot of the literature. I've done change projects before, so I'm well prepared to do that. And we started out with big ambitions, like these big goals I showed you at the beginning. And it was going very well during the first few months. And we saw, okay, we were really making progress here. We did our work. We did, for example, research internally. We asked the people in interviews, what do you think? How can we be more innovative? What needs to change? And things like that. And people were very enthusiastic about that, right? So you really say, okay, this is the type of change we need. Yes, finally, we're going somewhere and things like that. But then a few months into the project, we realized, so something is not moving in the right direction. And we had actually a slow death of motivation within the team that was tasked with bringing this change to the company, but also within the company in general, we had the feeling. And then we're asking ourselves, why is that so? What went wrong? And we digged in deeper, and we realized that whenever people left the conversations with us, whenever they left this zone of innovation, I would say, going out of interviews, when they went back into their units, all these aspirations died down almost instantly. Nothing changed within their units, almost nothing. And we dig deeper and ask, okay, why is that so? What happens? And we realized that that actually in this company there was quite a huge history of failed attempts of being more innovative. There were at least 2 other initiatives that tried that years before us, and we just didn't know, right? It never occurred to us that this history of failed attempts to be more innovative is really important here, right? I mean, we just ignored it, and we asked ourselves, how could it be that we have not noticed that? Such an obvious thing, right? So seeing what's really there is not easy. Let me share some things that we can do to avoid that. So how can we immerse deeper into the situation to really understand that? And I think the first thing is to accept the fact that everything we do has a certain perspective to it. We have a certain lens, we are biased, and we only have our perspective. And we need to stop assuming, and we need to start acknowledging what is really there. How can we do that? One small tool that I love to use is what I call a rich picture of now. What is that? It is about asking yourself and your team, what are the questions here that we are inclined not to ask, right? So going the other way around, really asking yourself, okay, what do I not ask? And then also, what kind of people do I not consult with about this change? Who am I ignoring here? Why do I not go to accounting? Why do I not talk to the facility manager? Why is that, right? And then deliberately doing that. So in that case, with this innovation story that I just shared with you, I found out that there was a guy, let's call him Frank, he was CFO of the company, and we were told right in the beginning when we started that initiative, just leave him alone. The CEO said something like, I will take care of Frank, you don't have to bother, he will not be a problem, but he will also not be helpful, so leave him out of that. And yeah, and afterwards, it turned out, Frank was a really nice guy and really great to talk with him when I got back to him finally. And B, he knew a lot about the innovation history, the failed attempts of innovation in the company. And he could have told us very, very early on in the project what was wrong about it. And maybe even not name it innovation initiative or something like that, right? Being really helpful there. So we were not inclined to talk with Frank, and that was a problem. And then to create this rich picture of now, you can also ask yourself, this is kind of a bonus question, why am I inclined to not ask those questions? What is the real reason why I'm not going there? And in my case, in our case, in this team, it was ignorance, plainly, right? And it was hypers. I thought together with this team we are well set and we will do that. No problem, but it created a problem. Okay. So the second thing I want to share with you, how we can see the reality, is to slow down, to speed up. And first aspect is slowing down to ask better questions. How can I ask better questions to those people? How can I specifically focus on questions that help me to understand the situation, and not asking questions to reply, so to have the answer already in my head. And this is really tough, right? To not do that. The other thing is the other small technique is, when you're in a conversation with someone, play back to the person what you just heard, because that is also a very good technique to avoid the bias that we have. So, is that what you just said? Did I get that correctly? Did I get that right? And then very often you will realize that you interpreted what this person said heavily, and it's very important to get it right, to get this other person's perspective. And then the third aspect is, with all of that, take the time to change the perspective. Try to ask yourself, do we have to look at this situation as a problem, as a challenge? We all love challenges in business worlds. Yes, challenge is the way to go, but can we look at it from an opportunity point of view? What is the chance that we have here? How can we build up on what is already there? These kind of things. Okay, and then the last thing is to ask yourself, what is my true intention here? And that is maybe the most important one. To be honest to yourself and say, okay, what's my motive? What do I think is in it for me? And how should I act appropriately, in an ethical way, in a mindful way, dealing with the situation? Be really clear about that, and also having conversations about that with others that you can trust, I think is very, very important. Okay, and for me in that situation, right, now it's crystal clear. I wanted to be the innovation hero for that company, right? Coming in, and yes, I know how to do that, and bring the salvation. But yeah, that's how it can go. Okay. Second aspect, completely different type of guy, and it's about questioning the status quo that I want to talk with you with the help of Elon Musk. No need to say much about him. Serial entrepreneur, from automotive to space and exploration and hyperloop stuff. A lot of things going on. Why is he a rebel? He's a rebel from a certain lens that he applies. He uses technology to disrupt what is going on, right? He says, okay, how can we make, with the newest technology, how can we do that in a way better way, in a radical new way? And this is the way of visionary thinking that he brings into the business world. And that's why I say he's, in a certain way, also a rebel. When we question the status quo, it will of course happen that not everybody is happy with what we are doing, right? When we shake the boat, people might get anxious or angry or whatever, and there is resistance. So we need to find a way how to shake the boat, how to change things, how to bring these messages of change without being kicked out immediately. Yeah? Because even Elon Musk needs allies that say, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. I can buy into your vision. Good. how can we do that? How can we question the status quo? First, I think we need to understand the system that we are in, or the system that we want to change, right? The fabric of the culture, if you will. One way to do that is to, one tool that I quite often use is to use an org chart that you have of almost all the companies, right? These big things, and then you create a power map out of that, meaning that you use the org chart and now you use your experience with the company, what you learned, and show what are the real informal ways of working within the company, where's the real flow of power and information within that system. And doing that, creating this kind of power map, you have a picture that shows you what is really going on behind the curtain, who is really in charge. And very often you have a picture later where you see, oh, there is this woman in middle management, and actually a lot of the things, a lot of the people connect to her. She is a hub within that system. The vice president or the C-level above, they don't have that many connections to where the real action is happening. And this helps you to really see, okay, how can I interact and change and do inventions within that company. Just one thing, if you have such a power map, make sure that it's not lying around. Because unless you want to stir up this kind of conversations, it can be very interesting, of course. Good. Then the question is, how can we, when we understood the system, how can we bring discomfort to the system? Because the system always tries to be in harmony, right? It tries to isolate itself against all the intrusion, against everything that shakes it up. That's a normal tendency within a system, right? So you need to find the discomfort that is already in the system, because there's almost always a discomfort. People talking at the water cooler, not openly, it's the small voices within the company. You need to find a way to amplify these, because you need the discomfort. How can we do that? Let me share one example. I was involved in a consultancy job that was about helping a team within a company to develop their next iteration of the most important product within that company. The company really bet its hope on this next version of its product. It was really, really important. It was a lot of tension, of course. And they put in their A players into that team to make it happen, to really do it right. And I was doing work with them. And every week we had we presented the current results in a weekly. We presented that to the C-level. And what we realized was that there was a huge disconnect between the team and the top management. The team had so many issues, and they had the feeling that they're not heard by top management. They just didn't listen to them. And we were thinking, okay, how can we bring that kind of discomfort, this dissent that is already in the company, to the attention of the top managers in a good way? And the small thing that we did when we started this meeting, I think it was on a Thursday every week, we had one slide into our results of the week slide deck, and it had the title, the innocent title, "What the Team Thinks." And then we put quotes of what the team actually thinks on that slide. And we started with rather innocent stuff that we put there to warm people up, the top management up to what's coming next. And I think it was in the third week of it when we really got rebellious, I would say. Let me quote just two of the things that we put there. We had one quote that got, "Our run towards the bottom regarding costs leaves no room for creating a better solution." That was one statement by a developer. And then the other one was, "The lack of trust from management makes me think about quitting." And that was the tipping point. You saw these people looking up from their phones, maybe for the first time, was it, "Oh, okay, our lead manager, our lead technologist maybe says something like that." The whole project is really on risk, and because these people were really betting their hope and the future of the company on that product, right? So we had their attention, and from that point on, it changed rather quickly. They really got more and more interested in what these people think needs to change and how to do their job in a better way. And this was kind of the tipping point for the team. Okay, the last thing I want to share here is how to break the unwritten rules. Now that we understood the rules that are a reality within the system, how can we break them intentionally? I learned something from entertainer and business coach Rick Lewis, who said there is a certain way to, or he brought up the concept of intelligent misbehavior. And I love that concept. So how can we intelligently misbehave? A little bit with strategy in our head. And what do we know by that? Let me share another example. I was in a project directly coaching a manager. And he told me in our first conversations, he told me, look, the problem that I have is my team has a big competence problem, right? I don't have the people I need to have. There are nobody else I could use. They don't have enough talent, enough skill, enough maturity to do the job. I'm really disappointed. How can you help me? Okay. So I was attending their team meetings, and it was quite obvious from the beginning, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to see that they didn't have any competence problem there. At least that was not their biggest problem. Their problem was, it was a problem of empowerment. The team was not empowered at all to make decisions, to take actions and stuff like that. So in meeting environments, you always had the big boss sitting front of the desk. You had the most senior people sitting right next to him. And then the further away you got from him, right, at the end of the other side of the room, next to the entrance, there was the people like the trainees, the new joiners, women. They were sitting there, right? So the power center was there, the other ones were there. And I was thinking, how can I intelligently misbehave here? What can I do? And because he was, whenever somebody said something that was not in his closest circle, they just ignored it. He ignored it, and of course then the other people, because he was the role model, tend to ignore what this person just said. And there was one person in that group, let's name her Carrie. Carrie was a trainee who just recently joined the company, and she wanted to change things. It was very obvious. She brought in good ideas, she raised questions and stuff like that, but she was shut down almost immediately all the time. And I decided to misbehave in a way that I use my spot that I have, my spotlight, because I was a consultant. They had to pay for me, so better he has to say something. And whenever I was asked about my opinion about a certain aspect, instead of doing it myself, I said, okay, what do you think, Carrie? What is your opinion on that, Carrie? Oh, Carrie, you just told me an hour before your idea about certain aspects of that. Can you share that with the group? And this was also really, it felt weird first for me to do that. I also had to step out of my comfort zone to really do that. But then it became quite a habit. And we've done that maybe 3 or 4 times. And then slowly it kicked in. I guess that all the other people around within the team, they got it almost instantly, what's happening, what I tried to achieve here. And the manager finally also got it. And he allowed more and more people to join in and to be part of the conversation because, of course, he and the others saw that Carrie has quite good ideas about what to do. And then it changed the group dynamics, and people were allowed to speak up more. And I think then he realized finally that it wasn't a problem about the skills within that group. It was more about empowering them to make good decisions. Okay, so that's about questioning the status quo. Let's go to the third aspect, to activate. Yeah, when we want to bring change, of course, we need action, right? The real stuff, doing stuff. And we can learn about Marina Abramovic, or she can tell us something about it. You know, maybe most of you know this, performance artist. We see her here and her doing her piece, The Artist is Present at MoMA in New York, 2010. And what she did was, allowing people to sit in opposite of her for 3 months. So you had to queue up to sit with her just for a short amount of time. And then people almost instantly opened up to her because she focused on them, right? People started to laugh, smile, cry. You felt the relief that these people had because they felt the full attention, the full focus of Marina on them. And what I find interesting is because when we speak of activating people, we think first about the noisy stuff of activation, the really, okay, now we need to run, we need to jump into the situation, stuff like that. She is activating people in a completely different way, which is very, very elegantly, because she is, in that way, she's questioning people about their own identity, about their own relationship to other people, and how to be seen by other people. So this is activating people in a completely different way, and I find that they're beautiful. And there are certain things we can learn about that, because a lot of the time we are talking a lot about change, but there are actually not that many actions, right? We have big decks of PowerPoints, but later nothing is happening. So how can we act to activate? And one thing I want to share with you is to create small steps forward. You could say it's kind of a minimal viable change, MVC, right? How can we do that? For example, you're still working in a company who don't get agile. You still want to do that, and why not introducing this idea of a daily stand-up as a very small step, and then see how the environment changes. Do people think it's helpful or not? You're frustrated by the quality of the meetings that you have within your company. Maybe suggest reserving 1 or 2 minutes at the end of every meeting to write down the decisions that we just made in that meeting. And most often it will turn out we don't do any decisions, we just get there to chatter. That is a problem. Okay, so these small steps, and then find a way how to talk about those small wins that you have, right? Put them on a spot, present them, do storytelling around them. All hands meetings or whatever your opportunity you have, use them to show them the outcomes and results of this small change. Focus on the outcomes, not on the process, because from my experience, people don't care about the process that much. They want to see results. They can be even really teeny tiny small, but show them the results, and then when they come to you and ask, what is the process behind that, then you got them. Then you can talk about the process, and that is, of course, very important. Yeah, that's one thing, making progress tangible. The other thing is that we use a kind of a virtuous circle. It's a quote by Dale Carnegie, actually, that action breeds confidence and courage, right? So action can change people, and I guess we don't apply to people's emotions enough when we do change work. We always have this rational stuff on the slides, why we should do it, but really talking to people from an emotional point of view is very, very important. So how can I change how this person feels in the situation? Because that will change how he thinks and what he believes. So the mindset can also be changed in small steps in that way. And then the person changes what he or she is doing. And it goes also the other way around. If we get people to do different things, they will also start think and feel in a different way. So it's really a virtuous circle here. And to allow for that, we need to have psychological safety within the environment. That is key, and that is something we need to think of from a systems perspective. So what Marina Abramovic is teaching us is that she is creating in that space, for example, a safety, right? This kind of psychological safety. I feel welcome, I feel safe here, I can share my thoughts, I can share my feelings. This is crucially important, and we very often forget that. Okay, let me share the last of one, actually my favorite. Marie Curie can teach us something about how to dare to be humble. Yeah. An amazing woman. Just 2 or 3 quick facts. She's the first woman who won the Nobel Prize. She's the only woman who won it twice in physics and in chemistry. She was coming she was not very well situated. She moved to Paris to do her studies, and then she became the first woman teacher at Sorbonne. And of course, she's also a big figure, a big forerunner for the whole feminist movement. And she really paved the way for women into science. That is a huge accomplishment. And while she was doing that, and this is the aspect I want to focus on here, she always stayed very, very humble. Yeah. So, for example, most of the money that she got from the Nobel Prizes, she immediately gave back to science, right? Or when somebody asked, this is a famous quote, asked her, "Oh, what gift can I give to you?" And she said, "Okay, if you insist on giving a gift to me, please make it a black dress so I can wear it in the laboratory." That was what she demanded, like that. So very, very humble, very down to earth. And I think that is something that we often could use more in the way we do change within organizations. So coming back to my story, my innovation initiative story from the beginning, remember when I was tasked with this team to bring change to the company, it was a failure, yeah, because the ambitions were misguided. I lacked the humility in that situation to really face the complexity of the system that I was about to change. But nevertheless, we got on our way. We changed small things, so transformative steps were there, and we learned a lot while we're doing that. I think that's also a message of hope, that whenever you do something like that, and you might fail with the big agenda, with the big goals, don't underestimate the actual change that you brought to the company and also for yourself. So how can we be more humble in that situation? I think one thing to do is to teach our tongue to say, "I don't know. I just don't know." And that is very, very tough. I struggle with that almost every day, because when you're brought in as a consultant, or when you internally want to change something, you're seen as an expert, and you depend in a certain way to be seen as an expert, right? And then you're very much inclined to, whenever you are asked a question, to say, "Oh, I know that. Oh, I know a little bit about that. I can say something about that." But we should more often say, I don't have a clue, actually, but I have an idea how to find out, right? This also helps us to be more, to relieve ourselves from a lot of the burden that we put on our shoulders, because we are setting realistic expectations with what is doable, and we can be more forgiving to ourselves if the change is not happening that rapidly or not in that amount that we want to have. Okay, and here's the last aspect that I want to share with you. It's about being changed to change. What do I mean by that? I mean about that to, in our hectic lives, still plan in time where we can reflect on what just happened, doing this kind of introspection to really see, how is that changing me? And how need I to change to be more helpful in that situation? What did I just learn in this conversation, for example, about myself? Not only about the situation, not only about the other people or the system, but about me. So that also brings us on a path of self-transformation. And it's also, of course, connected to this idea of having a growth mindset, meaning it's not only the system that can change, it's also and foremost me who can and has to change here. And I'm able to do that, right? I don't have to be fixated on my ideas, on my bias, and on things like that. This can be changed, and I think that is also a very valuable lesson and a very valuable thing to to achieve more humbleness in what we do. Okay, so we've gone full circle. There are other aspects, we couldn't cover them here. If you got interested and inspired and you want to learn more about Nelson Mandela and Iggy, what can Iggy tell us about change management, for example, please go to that URL. You can just leave your email address, and because I'm planning to bring that also online, that framework, so that you can look at it, and we will get back to you when it's ready. Apart from that, so that was what I wanted to present to you. I thank you very, very much for your attention that early in the morning. That's really great. And I'm now very, very curious to hear about your challenges and your questions around rebellious change. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Johannes. We've got a couple of microphones that will make their way magically into your eager hands. While those are being distributed, can anyone be a rebel?
Can anyone be a rebel? That's a very good question. I think it can be, let me point it that way, it can be very, very intimidating if you see these kinds of rebels, right? You think, whoa, what they achieved, I will never do that. And that is, for most of us, that is true. It doesn't have to be true, but but I think we can be small rebels in certain aspects in our life, right? We can really think about where I'm connected to a problem, where do I see something that I need to change, either in business or in my private life, in my community, for example. And then I can get inspired and say, okay, I do something here. And everybody has to decide on her own how much she is willing to step out of her comfort zone. But I really encourage you to try that from time to time. Right?
Good. Is there a particular topic that you personally feel in the world of work that people should join a rebellion for, or start a rebellion for?
There are several topics. I think one of the biggest issues that companies have is how people get compensated for their work. It's one of the biggest barriers from my perspective. So that we have almost, at many places, we have still individual compensation for what you achieved. And if we always say you need to work in teams, we want this kind of teamwork, we do it together, then we also need to share the achievements and also the non-achievements that we have, right? It's very, very tricky, of course, because it's so ingrained in the DNA of these companies. But I think that would be something very, very worthy to change.
That is good. I think everyone can get behind that as well. So, a hand again when you want the microphone. Please share your name and which company or organization you represent. And so, who's first? Sorry, who's first? Vem vill börja?
Can also be a comment or something like
be
that.
A comment.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes, it doesn't have to be a question.
Okay.
Right? It can just be.
I think you get to start in the yellow jacket. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Lana. I'm from Stockholm FinTech Hub. And basically what we're trying to do is help banks and regulators work together with startups in order to innovate financial services. And it's kind of interesting dynamic when you look at the startup culture and the culture, like the traditional industry culture.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, any tips from your side how to facilitate them to collaborate in a better way?
Yeah. Wow.
It's a very tips.
Good,
I like that.
Yes, a very good question. Because we see that more often and often to happen and also to be a problem, right? I think to tie it back to the thing here is doing a good way of immersing into each and everybody's, so in the respective cultures, to do an onboarding in both ways, to let people that are coming more from the traditional organization, from the corporate, go there and have as much time there as possible to really feel and see the environment and be there, and vice versa. Because the vice versa part is even more important, because a lot of times people from the old corporate, they're eager to be in the hip place, right, where all these creative people are running around and stuff like that. That feels good, it feels fresh and stuff like that. So that's not a difficult route. The other route is way, way more difficult, to really bring those people, this millennials or whoever, to be part in a corporation, and then do that in a coached way, in a guided way. Because not just throwing them in there, because they will just sit next to each other and do not know how to talk to each other, facilitate these kinds of conversations, let them work on stuff immediately together would be my advice. Yeah.
Cool. Let's move over there in the red jacket. While the microphone gets over there, I got a question before we started, which was, this is going to be really interesting, but how come the two of you, you're both designers, why are you talking about this? That's an excellent question. Let's ask Johannes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think one of the capabilities that designers all over the board, whatever their focus might be, is to have empathy for what's going on around them, to really be trained in a way to catch up those small this small signals that are flowing around, and finding ways to amplify that, because designers are also good in visualizing that stuff and making it communicable. So creating tangible stuff that people can talk about, because otherwise it just stays in people's heads, or it's some written somewhere. But you need to bring it into the room, really put the elephant into the room, and designers can do that. But that is not that saying that designers are the only one who should do that. You can learn from them, but I think it's more this kind of designerly mindset that helps you, and everybody can do that, because in the end, at a certain point, we are all designers. Right?
Superb. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Christine, and I'm also a consultant.
Hey.
And I'm just curious as to, how do you keep things from reverting back to the status quo after you've left as a consultant?
Wow.
Oh, that's a good one. We had progress. You leave the building.
Yeah. Because your contract ends, there's no money left, you cannot stay there. Yeah. You can stay, but on your own cost. I think the best thing is to see that problem first. So at the beginning, pointing that out and telling your client, look, you don't want that to happen, because it happened to you most probably several times before. And then being smart about it and telling, okay, this can be, as a consultant, for me as a consultant, this can be a USP, that I start talking with my client about those things, that I already warned them about those things, remember them about the bad experiences that they had with that, and then suggest some things that might help. So saying, okay, how can I collaborate with people as close as possible, me as a consultant, to train them to be this kind of a change maker within the organization. So using your abilities as a rebel to rally people around you, inspire them, make sure that the engagement is long enough to do that. It takes time. You need, from my experience, you need 3 months to really be able to do that. 6 months is way better. And then people are catching up. People got this bug, and they can continue to work on your when you're already gone, right? And it's way more fulfilling when you realize years later that this is still going on in the company, and people are really working on this kind of change. Excellent question. Thank you very much.
Cool. Where does the microphone go next? It's going over there.
Hi, I'm Beata from Dandy People. I'm also a consultant trying to change the world a little bit.
Yes.
When you make your way through a spider web like you described earlier, I also create my own spider webs, through organizations. I often see the people who are the ones that are steering the organizations are the most negative people that you're trying to sort of you're not trying to change them, but you're trying to find a root cause and inspire them. How do you approach that when you find that the spider in the middle is actually quite negative attitude that tells you, we've done this before, we've tried this before, why are you here? This is never going to work. Thank you.
Yeah.
I like that, the grumpy spider in the middle.
Yes, the grumpy spider. Yeah.
It's almost a little bit like old children's stories with like the
Child of
spider
the
that
weapon,
waits to
yeah.
pounce.
Yes.
Like that metaphor. So how do we get to the spider?
From my experience, I can only talk, of course, from my experience. I think you trying to convince them from your perspective is not helpful. That will not change them, right? The only proof for the positive aspects of change, I think that you can bring, is to help them to see how much positivity and how much good things are already going on in the company. So first of all, understand what this CEO or whoever really wants to have, right? Get down to his specific needs, or let's talk about her specific needs, okay? Because that is how you get her. And then you find ways, where do we see small things already going on in the company that are going in that direction? And then emphasizing those things, bringing these to her attention. Doing, for example, in one project we did short movie clips where we interviewed people and we took best of that and presented it to the person. And this was helpful because their own people telling them something about that, right? You can also go a step further and say, okay, let's make people write letters to the CEO about this topic, right? To really say, okay, look, this is something that we know from our company's vision that we want to do. Here's where we're already doing it. Can you please support us more in that direction? And then people might warm up to this understanding, because the problem is not that they are mean people. The problem is that they are so far away from the actual action, the actual stuff that is going on a daily basis, and they have so many other big issues that they need to keep in their head that they are just occupied. And to pause for a moment, to get them to pause for a moment and look at the real situation is, I think, the most valuable thing you can do, right? Yeah.
Good stuff. Got another question. Are certain countries easier to rebel in the business context?
Wow. That's a good question. So my main focus is Europe. So this is where most of my experience comes from. Because you also have countries like the US where a certain way of being rebellious, like Elon Musk, right, is part of the culture. And it's way easier to do this kind of rebellion there than other things, right? So I think what I can say is you need to take culture very serious. You need to take the way how the people in the country see themselves, what identity they have, and the way business functions there. This stuff very seriously. Because otherwise you risk to be kicked out, right? This is about going back to this idea of misbehaving intelligently. How can I first learn their rules, behave in their way so that they build up trust? Because thank you for the question. Now I realize how important that is. To mention that again, trust is of course something that you need to do all of that. You need to build up the trust first, and people in a specific country will learn to trust you if you don't have to be one of them. That is my experience, but you need to show that you're respecting them for who they are and to treat them in that way, right?
I think that's a brilliant thing to end on. Respect the people that you're rebelling with and for. Thank you very much for coming, all of you. There's coffee, there's drinks. Johannes, you're here for a little bit longer. Again, Johannes Stock.
Thank you very much.